This video is sponsored by Squarespace. Sebastian Vettel won on Question Time last week and talked a lot about the environment, renewables, energy efficiency, all that good stuff, before host Fiona Bruce addressed what seemed to be a bit of an elephant in the room, saying to Seb,
but it's interesting that you've talked a lot, in fact, on most of the questions that we've dealt with about energy. You're a Formula One driver, which is one of the most gas-guzzling sports in the world.
Yeah, it's true. And
does that make you a hypocrite?
To which he responded,
It does. It does. And you're right. You know, you're right when you laugh, because, I mean, there's questions I ask myself every day, and I'm not a saint.
This showing sparked a lot of support, but of course a lot of debate. This ain't the first time I'm talking about a driver being a hypocrite on the channel, by the way, remember? But it's clearly a topic I find interesting, so we're back here again, revisiting it. Last time it was Lewis, now it's Seb. Do F1 drivers have the right to talk about the environment while participating in, as Fiona put it, one of the most gas-guzzling sports in the world? Let's talk about it. So most of you probably won't have a clue what Question Time is, so let's start with that. It's basically a political Q&A TV show here in the UK where you've got members of the audience who are members of the public, asking questions to members of parliament and also other hand-picked kind of high-profile individuals. The show travels all around the UK, and last week it was in Hackney in London, big up Mare Street, that's where I used to live. And we had our very own Sebastian Vettel flying the flag for F1 alongside Suella Braverman, UK Attorney General, Shabana Mahmood, MP for Birmingham Ladywood, Miatta Farnborough, Chief Executive of the New Economics Foundation, and comedian Jeff Norcott. Basically their equivalent of Crofty, Brundle, Caroon and Ted. But why, Tommo? Why is a German Formula One driver on a British political TV show? It's an understandable question. Well, we know for a while now that Seb's been on a mission to raise awareness around a lot of societal, social and environmental issues. Aston Martin's legendary chief of comms, Matt Bishop, was instrumental in putting this one together, and it was a match made in heaven as far as I'm concerned. Take an F1 driver with a huge online young following as well and put him into this kind of political debate. It brings a lot more eyeballs. I think it brought a lot of interest from people who typically wouldn't watch Question Time. I don't watch Question Time. I, for one, thought Seb gave a fantastic account of himself. He was very passionate, very well read on the subjects that he did talk about, and very honest and concise on the subjects that he wasn't really there to add anything to. He also gave a really interesting German perspective on a lot of the British-centric issues that were being discussed. He was self-aware enough to acknowledge the hypocrisy that inevitably a lot of people watching would have felt towards him talking about what he was talking about, but articulate enough to explain his standpoint without coming across anything other than genuine. That's extra incredible considering English isn't even his first language, by the way. Specifically, he spoke mainly on energy dependence and energy sources, which is obviously a particularly hot topic at the minute. The fact that the British and German governments are still buying so much energy from the Russian state, essentially funding their war on Ukraine. How those in charge should have acted sooner, invested more in domestic sustainable energy long before this huge con of energy dependence was made so abundantly obvious. I do also wonder if he was still a Ferrari driver, whether they would have given this opportunity to him and allowed him to do something like this. Because Ferrari comms is notoriously tight-lipped. Maybe not. Maybe this freedom to express himself and talk about what he's passionate about is something that was part of the deal with Aston Martin and something they were prepared to facilitate and allow him to do more. Because you know what? Even Sebastian Vettel, a man notorious for having zero social media presence, he's got his own website. Did he set it up and moderate it himself? Probably not, but that's besides the point. If you want your very own website, whether it's for a blog, online store, portfolio, or just for a bit of fun, Squarespace is the place to go. Thousands of beautiful templates, 24/7 customer support. I've been using them for years, couldn't recommend them more highly. Best thing of all, you can try Squarespace out completely free of charge, play around with the functionality. It's only when you want to put that beautiful website you've created live to the rest of the world that you have to pay anything. So go open another tab, type in squarespace.com, and once you've got that website you love, go to squarespace.com/TommoF1 to save 10% off your first purchase of a website or domain. So this part should be pretty obvious, but why is it particularly important for F1, maybe more than other sports, to show that it's making an attempt to be as sustainable as possible? I think the main word here is reputation, the perception that the broader world has of Formula One. Because since Liberty Media took over, they've made a lot of changes and they've done a lot to change the perception and the reputation of Formula One as a sport. From something reserved for the old, rich, privileged man to now that's something that genuinely, you go to a Grand Prix now and it feels like you've got Everyone. I already felt that at Miami. I felt that at Silverstone in the past. That F1 really does garner a proper diverse, not a fake diversity, a proper, anyone can jump on board, anyone can enjoy the sport. And it's great. They've done that through Netflix. They've done that through some cracking social media stuff. And they've done that through letting the drivers express themselves, which is exactly what Seb's doing here. If you want a driver who's a bit of fun, doesn't take himself too seriously, Daniel Ricciardo's your man. If you're a big Twitch person, if you want someone who's down with the culture, you're a bit younger, Lando Norris. If you want to follow the greatest of all time, then you can follow Alex Albon. There's something for everyone. But aside from that, there's also the environmental reputation of Formula One. The metrics of being green and being shown to care about the environment is no longer optional. It's an essential component of any business's marketing to be trustworthy, responsible, honest. You need to be seen to be trying to be green. F1 is a business. F1 is no different. It's not just about being moral and doing the right thing. It's about keeping the sport alive. Big brands will not want to be associated with a Formula One that's still living in the past. Be that the manufacturers, so, Mercedes, Renault, Ferrari, or arguably more importantly, the broader pool of sponsors, because sponsorship is the lifeblood of the sport. It has been since 1967 when we saw the first gold leaf branded cigarettes on the old Team Lotus. Do most of the top dogs at these companies actually give a toss about the environment? Probably not. And that's probably why there is a lot of skepticism around this messaging. The amount of greenwashing we see these days is crazy. But all that does is makes it harder to see who actually cares and is actually doing it for the right reasons, not just to look good from a marketing point of view. So what exactly is the environmental impact of Formula One? Why does being an F1 driver make you a hypocrite for speaking on climate change? Well, it's a global sport transporting thousands of tons of cargo all around the world, putting in hundreds of thousands of people, not just drivers and staff, fans, everyone behind the scenes. It's a huge operation to take it around the world, and that doesn't come without some pretty significant energy usage. In 2019, Formula One put out a report looking into exactly this, working out exactly what the total carbon footprint of the sport was, as well as outlining a plan for net carbon neutral from factory to flag by 2030. We're only 7.5 years away from that pretty ambitious goal. Per season, Formula One created an estimated 250,000 tonnes of CO2. 45% of that just being from logistics. Only 0.7% of that was from the actual cars themselves. For a bit of perspective, 250,000 tonnes of CO2 is equivalent to the carbon footprint of about 30,000 homes over the course of a year in terms of energy usage. So that's what F1 uses. But what about return? Because there is definitely an environmental return on some of that energy at least. F1 was essentially able to gamify research and development and create this technology that would eventually trickle down not just to automotive but to a massive range of wider applications. These 1.6 litre turbocharged engines are the most efficient ICEs, internal combustion engines, ever made. They're running at over 50% thermal efficiency these days. I mean, only go back to 2013 and it was only about 30%. F1 R&D over the years has undoubtedly made its way into lots of applications. More efficient engines and hybrid systems for your road car. Kinetic energy recovery system, or KERS, was used a lot in large vehicles like buses in town centres. Consumer electronics, wireless data transfer, medical technology. These are all sectors that have benefited in some way, shape or form from F1's R&D. Question is it reasonable to suggest that all of these pros have kind of outweighed the damage, the 250,000 tonnes of CO2 per year from F1? Probably not, in my opinion, but I don't know. I can't tell you. I ain't got the answers. Now, you can argue, of course, as road cars move more towards electric and F1 keeps the ICE component, that its relevance in road cars is decreasing. But you could also argue this aggressive move towards carbon neutrality, be that ultra efficient and low carbon logistics and travel, or 100% renewably powered offices, facilities and factories. You've got that 100% sustainable fuel coming in 2026. Carbon offsetting and carbon sequestration 2, which is basically taking carbon in from the atmosphere and storing it. It's very plausible to look at Formula One and the direction it's going, cars to one side, racing to one side, and see it showcase how you can take a truly global business, employing thousands of people across the world, and actually make it carbon neutral. I mean, on the carbon offsetting point and all, the more profitable the sport is, the more money the sport has, the more surely it's able to pay off its 250,000 tons of CO2 debt. If the sport makes all that CO2 but then puts money into planting trees, solar panels, wind energy, whatever, to compensate for all that, then the sport is carbon neutral and there is no net damage on the environment. Happy days. So is Seb a hypocrite? Do as I say, not as I do. I remember seeing this comment quite a few times on the Lewis video. So now we're back again, seeing a driver talk about sustainability and the environment while driving a really expensive car around Monaco every weekend. What a hypocrite. Do I understand why, on face value, to people who don't understand and appreciate the nuances of the sport and the nuances of the individuals who are participating in the sport, why they would see this and think hypocrite? I do. I understand it, but it doesn't mean I agree with it. Because I think when you dig a bit deeper, that's not the case at all. It's almost like the word hypocrite has been so overused that it's kind of lost its original meaning. There is genuine hypocrisy in the world. Don't get me wrong, right? People who paint a picture externally, yet internally, they live very different values to what they project out into the world. But with Seb, with Lewis, am I seeing this level of hypocrisy? No, not at all. I'm seeing two people who are literally living the dream that we had as kids growing up to want to be a racing car driver. And as they've grown up as not just racing car drivers, but actual normal human beings as well. Because it's easy to forget that take their ability to race a car to one side, they are just normal people. That they're increasingly aware of the importance to protect the planet and the role that F1 can play in that wider conversation. I see people who are at least trying to do something and trying to have a positive impact. Like, could they do more? Of course they could do more, but so could anyone who literally advocates for literally anything. Like, I'm a big advocate for the support of homeless people and the support of teenagers with cancer, but that doesn't mean my house is full of people that I've taken in and I'm down the cancer ward every day. Does that make me a hypocrite? Does that make me a bad person? I don't think so. I think a lot of the time we set standards of people that we could never expect from ourselves, and I don't think that's fair. And don't get me wrong, there are people out there who do go above and beyond, and they are the real heroes. There's just so much cynicism in this debate, just thinking the worst of people, and that's just not how my mind works, man. I think that's such a negative way to live your life and perceive every action as having this kind of alternative desire behind it. Like, come on, imagine you're in Seb's position, right? So you started karting when you're 4, you're living the dream, you're working your way up, you got support from your family, you get the break, you get into single-seaters, then you get into a Toro Rosso, you win in Monza, you get that call for Red Bull, you win 4 world titles on the bounce. You're literally becoming a legend of the sport. Yet as time's gone on, you have educated yourself more on the environment and the wider world outside of this F1 bubble. So what? Option 1, you bugger off, leave the sport entirely, go live a nice new life in the mountains, grow a big beard, suck lots of leaves. Sure, your personal impact will probably drop significantly, although you probably won't have the money to carbon offset. But then what happens? Another driver who doesn't care about the environment takes your seat. They don't put their wages necessarily into carbon offsetting. Maybe they put that money into 4 Learjets. That'd be nice. Plus, your voice of authority getting behind F1 becoming more sustainable is gone out the sport, so there is a bit less pressure, there is a bit less awareness around the issue. Or option 2, do you stay in the sport you love and help change it and make it relevant for generations to come? Not just for you. You keep racing cars that you love driving, you keep the sport that you love alive, you help accelerate that change. For me, there's no debate. There's only one route that not only is better for everyone, but on a personal level, it's better for you as well because you carry on racing. Protecting the planet and being green and blah-de-blah-de-blah isn't about not having nice things. We can still have nice things. The sport is already making changes. It's going in the right direction to have net zero carbon footprint in 7.5 years. I've got no reason to believe that they won't get there because the minds in Formula One are some of the most intelligent, the most capable minds in the world. F1 is all about problem solving. This is yet another problem that they are solving. So let's get behind the message. Stop dunking on people. Stop dunking on these drivers for at least trying. Because in my opinion, if that's the way you're seeing it and that's the way you're going about it, Either you don't understand the nuances of the issue, or you don't care. Because I do think a lot of people are just so quick to pull out the hypocrite card. It's just another way of saying they don't care. Which, you know, if you don't care, you're like, you do you. You don't have to care. I think you should care, but you don't have to care. But at least be honest about it and don't start chucking out hypocrites when that's not what you actually mean. That's how I feel. Let me know in the comments below. Thank you Squarespace for sponsoring this video once again. My name's Tommo in my new office with my new desk as well, by the way. Thanks again. Have a good one. Ta-da.